centre row of instruments here, basically engine instruments. We have a row of instruments for each engine. 4 engines on the aircraft. You can see engine number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and basically they're if we run through them, a power indication on the top, a tachometer showing the speed of the big fan in the front of the engine, exhaust gas temperature in each engine, then another tachometer showing the speed of our second stage compressor, speed of a third stage compressor, and then our fuel flows. We were talking before how we work in kilograms. This is in kilograms an hour for each engine, 2,900 kilograms for that number 1 engine. Slight variation between that and the other engines, but it's well within tolerances. Then the sort of things you're used to in any engine: oil pressure, oil temperature, oil quantity, and a vibration in the engine. Normally we don't have that screen up. We turn that off and just leave it blank because we use that for other purposes. We can pull up the fuel system and have a look at how much fuel we've got in each tank and where the fuel's flowing from, things like that. We leave that screen blank. We also have up in the little box up in the centre here a little, like a notebook, electronic notebook, that if we have a malfunction with something, I'll just quickly take out the auto throttle, and you'll see there'll be a message come up there, and you'll hear a little oral warning go off. That's telling us the auto throttle is disconnected. Depending on what the failure is, we go into our checklist, we read through the checklist, and if we fix the problem, it goes away, as this one has done, and if we can't fix it, we end up with a known unserviceability on the aircraft. If we've got serious problems like fires and things like that, they make a little bit more noise and they come up in red up there to indicate a higher level warning. With the 2-man cockpit up here, that's one of the design functions that allows us to operate the aircraft with just the 2 pilots without the flight engineer. I think I've just about covered everything. We're into this area here, the throttles or engine controls for the aircraft. Push them forward for more power, pull them back for less power. Over the front, some levers here we use for the reverse thrust. We only use those after we've landed. They're not active in the air. A flap gauge here, or a flap lever here to select our flaps. Speed brake lever on the left. Fuel control for the engines. When we close down an engine, we use these fuel controls. And then a lot of radio gear in here. We've got same sort of selectors on either side to select what radio we use. Down the back of the pedestal, we've got trim indications and things like seatbelt signs and a few other things. But basically, that's the aeroplane. So it's all laid out in a symmetrical sort of fashion and very logical. The other thing is that from either pilot position, we have to get to various levers. The undercarriage lever over here, we can reach from either side of the cockpit. So sometimes people think that it's very narrow up here or very small, but really it's all designed that way so that we can move around the cockpit or move across the cockpit and touch things.
There are only 2 places on Earth where a magnetic compass is of no use: the North Magnetic Pole and where we are now, right over the top of the South Magnetic Pole. Conditions at Antarctica can be extreme, and when Qantas Flight 2602 arrived over this ice world, the conditions were extremely fantastic. With visibility of 400 kilometres either side of the aircraft, Antarctica showed off its sights in the summer sunshine. Not all adventurers and explorers are of bygone era. Like space, the pioneer men of the Antarctica are today's people. Captain Trevor Jensen from Qantas is the man who researched, planned and started scenic flights to Antarctica. And for over 20 years, Peter Keege has explored the great southern continent from the ground.
It's all about natural resources and their careful management, and you know the flying program's made a huge contribution to the way we now look at Antarctica. 20 years on, there wasn't the sort of public profile that the Antarctic now has, and it wasn't as easy for people, Australians, to see their territory. They're taxpayers, they've paid for a lot of the research down here, but now you can actually buy a ticket and see that country.
One of the I got into trouble last year. Every time we spoke about it, I called them glaciers instead of glaciers. But we've seen some fantastic glaciers in this part of the world, haven't we? They're massive in size.
Well, these are the world's largest glaciers. We didn't see glacier today, but it has an area about the size of Western Australia, and just its entry to the sea is probably equal to the coastline of half of Victoria. So the scale, you know, you've got to get a sense of scale here. When you come to the Antarctic, you've got to forget about the limits on landforms that you see in what we call the lower latitudes. And this is all about extending the mind a little bit and seeing how nature really is in the real raw hard facts of Antarctica.
Some of those icebergs too, there's a lot of spot springs there, aren't there? Some of those are massive, up 5 kilometres, 6 miles.
Well, some of the ones we saw today were probably, well, I'd say 15 to 20, some of the big ones. But we saw lots of very healthy bergs in the order of 2.5 to 3 kilometres. And they would have keels of about 1,000 metres, so they've got the potential to feed a city like Adelaide with water for a year, and that's one of the issues that has been looked at in the last 15 years about Antarctica.
And the other interesting thing today was down at Mount Melbourne, when you were pointing out the ash, etc., on the side of the mountain down there. We didn't see that last year, did we?
Well, that's the fascinating thing about Antarctica. It is such a remote environment that those plants and animals that colonise it generally are unique to the Antarctic. And at Mount Melbourne, we have a cinder volcano. It's not a lava volcano, and the small life forms, the small microbiological life forms that have colonised in that area, living on the steam coming out from the volcano and the heavy salt loadings, are now unique to that part of the world. It is, in fact, a protected area, even under the Antarctic Treaty, to stop people introducing new life forms. But more and more Antarctica is being used as a laboratory to examine the possibilities of remote locations. And there are some organisms now recently found at Davis that live in very saline lakes that don't freeze down to temperatures of minus 30 degrees Celsius, that receive very little sunlight, and these organisms are now living in those environments. And these environments aren't far different to what one would expect on Mars.